Some of the greatest stories, franchises, and cinematic universes are not without their plot holes. As you're about to see, even the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not without its plot holes. So stay tuned and don't go away, because we're telling you why Marvel's biggest multiverse plot hole is utterly depressing. Let's dive right in. First up, what is the Marvel Multiverse's biggest plot hole? You're about to find out. According to comic book experts and geeks, Avengers Forever #4, the latest Marvel comic series, has revealed why the idea of the multiverse actually creates a huge plot gap, whose final penalties are totally miserable. Avengers Forever is a miniseries that explores the consequences of a wicked plot hatched by Mephisto and Doom Supreme. After gathering the most dangerous and evil villains from the whole multiverse, the new set of villains attacked one planet after the other and killed the defenders in the past before the Age of Heroes could form. The full scope and detail of the plan are not yet known, but the end result is that numerous planets have been conquered, and once the villains conquer a particular planet, the conquered planets are barely recognizable. Their cultures and civilizations are completely obliterated, and the planets are turned into a dark and twisted reflection of their respective overlord. For example, the Ghost Rider of Earth 616, a character named Robbie Reyes, has been taken to Earth 818 by Deathlock, a cyborg soldier of a mysterious ally known as Avenger Prime, and Earth 818's overlord and ruler are the Black Skull, a deranged version of the Red Skull who mutated with the Venom symbiote, which imprisons and tortures Robbie and the Deathlock. Next up, is it possible for Marvel's villains to destroy its heroes? Let's dig a little deeper. Avengers Forever #4 does have its share of heroes, but there aren't many, and some are even on the run. In this universe, Tony Stark becomes Ant-Man, and he builds his own team of Avengers. Together, they force their way into the Black Skull's prison and free the prisoners. But just as the heroes were about to defeat the tyrant overlord, he activated portals to other dimensions and realities, and a dangerous horde of Black Skull armies swarm the prison and is set to turn the tide of war. And this is why the concept of the multiverse creates such a big narrative plot hole. The core premise or idea of the multiverse is that an infinite number of parallel universes or realities exist. From a purely creative standpoint, it's a great way to expand the narrative universe like Marvel, but it's a double-edged sword and creates other problems at the same time. For one, it creates a huge problem that is clearly visible in multiversal masters of evil. For instance, Mephisto's ultimate goal is to steal a page from the hero's book and have the strongest villains team up. This isn't a new concept, but it does provide infinite possibilities in the multiverse, which means that Mephisto and Doom Supreme can choose the deadliest villains to create a terrifying group of villains. And an infinite number of planets to conquer means an infinite number of villains. We saw this when the villainous team of Black Skulls was assembled in Avengers Forever #3. What this means is that if the villains create an army, they'll likely be able to destroy the heroes. Up next, what are some of the biggest plot holes in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Let's take a look. If there's one thing we know for certain, it's that the MCU gets bigger every year, and more connections are drawn between the various Avenger universes, Iron Man, and Guardians of the Galaxy. As things become more complex, any plot holes and inconsistencies will ultimately only get larger. One of the most glaring potholes is that of the Broken Rainbow Bridge. It involves the big emotional climax of Thor and the destruction of the Bifrost, which connects Asgard to Earth. Thor was separated from his new lover, Jane Foster, and it looks like he might never see Jane again. By the time the first Avengers film rolls around, Thor's back on Earth, and there's only a brief mention of dark energy to explain his presence. On top of that, Thor doesn't even try to find Jane, and in Thor: The Dark World, the Rainbow Bridge is fixed with no explanation, and it's not mentioned ever again, so what's that about? Some fans have pointed out other plot holes as well, such as the issue with the Pym particles and how they work. In Ant-Man, the character Hank Pym argues that his Pym particles have the ability to shrink objects. Apparently, this is done by reducing the distance between atoms. All of the science seems theoretically sound until you get to the part that allows people to access the subatomic quantum realm. If your head's starting to hurt, don't worry, because we'll break it down for you. If the spaces between atoms change but the atoms remain the same size, it would be impossible to become smaller than an atom. Stay tuned and don't go away, because we're revealing some of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's biggest plot holes. Up next, whatever happened to the spare Infinity Gauntlet? The spare Infinity Gauntlet was included included as a fun Easter egg, but some fans feel that Marvel should have thought more carefully before including the Infinity Gauntlet, with its set of 6 Infinity Stones included. This was part of Odin's collection of artifacts in the first Thor film. Hela, the Asgardian goddess of death, did explain it away in Thor Ragnarok when she shouted, "Fake!" But despite her comment, it's still a plot hole. And we all know that Thanos has a thing for Infinity Stones and gave away the only one he had. But in order to get his hands on the Tesseract, also known as the Space Stone, he has to get help from Loki. Thanos even throws in a magical mind-controlling scepter to help Loki accomplish his mission. The scepter contains the Mind Stone, the only Infinity Stone that Thanos has in his collection. And of course, Loki loses it. But herein lies the problem. Why would Thanos give his only Infinity Stone away? It doesn't really make any sense. If Thanos is unable to find any Infinity Stone that's already in front of him, he couldn't possibly find the other 5. And if the scepter controlled the Chitauri invading Earth, why do they all collapse when their mothership is blown up? The issues can definitely be considered an inconsistency or a plot hole. Up next, what's the deal with Iron Man's power source problem? Let's find out. In order for Iron Man to power up his suit and prevent shrapnel from entering his heart and killing him, Tony Stark and Dr. Ho-Yun-Sen create a small arc reactor and put it in his chest. This is what powers the original Iron Man suit that helps him escape from the Ten Rings terrorist group. Later, they redesign and update the suit with a more powerful reactor. Essentially, Iron Man has a source of limitless, clean energy in his chest. But wait, if this is actually the case, why does a significant portion of Iron Man 3 involve Iron Man running around a small Tennessee town while his armor recharges via a car battery in a garage? Does anyone else think that fails to make sense? Indeed, it's yet another plot hole in the Marvel Universe. But let's go back to Thor for a minute. There's an issue with Thor's Infinity Stone quest. Thor has a vision in Age of Ultron, and at the end of the film, he decides to seek out the Infinity Stones. However, that was almost completely ignored in Ragnarok. In Ragnarok, Thor tries to find the stones, can't, and then just gives up. But in the Age of Ultron, he had detailed intelligence and knew exactly how many Infinity Stones were out there. So, what happened here? Why the plot hole? Many believe it was a calculated decision to ignore a plot dead end, in order to give director Taika Waititi full creative control over the storyline. Finally, what do Doctor Strange and Spider-Man's timelines have in common? The answer is plot holes. Because of some weird timeline stuff, fans have dated Doctor Strange as taking place in the year 2020, largely thanks to the fact that Pangborn's X-ray was registered on December 9th, 2014. Some fans have even done some detailed Marvel maths and concluded it would have taken Pangborn 6 years at the very least to be able to play basketball again, which allowed Doctor Strange to meet him on the basketball court. But the Doctor Strange timeline creates problems for the events of the Winter Soldier. If Doctor Strange takes place even 1 year after 2014, why is the Doctor named as a person of interest in the Winter Soldier, which also apparently takes place in 2014? Keep in mind that Doctor Strange's journey to become a master of magic was entirely accidental. But what about Spider-Man's timeline issues? Spider-Man Homecoming opens in 2012 during the post-Avengers invasion operation. An on-screen superimposition tells us it's 8 years later, which means the events of Homecoming take place in 2020. Like Doctor Strange, this completely distorts the timeline. The MCU generally operates under the assumption that its films are set in the present day. If writers, directors, and producers keep shifting things into the future and stretching out timelines, this will likely cause some serious problems with the plotting and setting of future films, as it clearly has already in past films. That's a wrap for today's video. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.